Hey, so if you're living or working anywhere in the Greater Toronto Area, you are on land with a history that goes back thousands and thousands of years, way before the CN Tower ever graced our skyline. In this explainer, we're going to explore that incredible history, and more importantly, what it means for us today to build respectful relationships with the Indigenous peoples who've always been here. It's all about understanding our shared past so we can build a much better future together.
So, let's start with a really fundamental question. Before the glass towers, before the streetcar tracks, before any of the stuff we see today, who was here? Just taking a moment to really think about that is the very first step to understanding the place we all call home.
You might be thinking, okay, but why is this conversation so important? Right here, right now. Well, it's about making a shift. It's about moving beyond just saying the words in a land acknowledgement and actually taking real, meaningful action. This is where awareness stops being a history lesson and starts being a catalyst for change.
Okay, let's dive into this a bit more. In a place as busy and diverse as the GTA, this isn't some abstract concept. Understanding the Indigenous context is a core piece of social responsibility. It's crucial for building truly inclusive workplaces, and honestly, it's just about being a good neighbor and a good partner in this community.
Now, this slide is so important because of the distinction it makes. For a long, long time, the goal was what we called cultural competency, which is basically learning facts and figures. But now, the focus is shifting to something much deeper, cultural safety. This isn't just about what you know in your head. It's about what you do with your actions to create a space where Indigenous colleagues, clients, and partners feel seen, heard, and genuinely safe. It flips the script and puts the responsibility on us to create that environment.
All right, so to really get what's happening now, we have to look back. So let's journey back in time and explore the deep, deep roots of Indigenous presence right here on the land we call Toronto. This timeline gives us a great bird's-eye view. For literally thousands of years before any Europeans arrived, this area was a bustling hub for nations like the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe. Then we get to 1805, and a really key event happens, the Toronto Purchase. Fast forward to today, and that treaty relationship continues with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are the rightful treaty holders and custodians of this land.
So what exactly was the Toronto Purchase, or Treaty 13? Well, it was the formal land agreement that basically established the city. But, and this is so critical to understand, its history is incredibly complex. Right from the get-go, there were major disputes about its fairness, disagreements over everything from the price they paid to the actual boundaries of the land. That complexity is a part of the story that still shapes relationships today.
And that brings us to a part of the story that's, well, it's tough, but it's absolutely essential to talk about. If we're serious about building respectful relationships, we have to be willing to understand the ongoing legacy of colonization and the very real impacts it continues to have. A huge piece of that legacy is, of course, the residential school system. The stated goal was assimilation, a deliberate, government-sanctioned attempt to erase entire cultures, languages, and identities. Acknowledging this dark chapter isn't about pointing fingers. It's about facing the truth of our shared history so we can move forward.
The devastating impact of policies like residential schools didn't just end when the last school closed. It created something called intergenerational trauma. Think of it like this: the pain, the loss, and the harm didn't just affect the survivors. It was passed down through families, affecting mental health, community bonds, and the ability to pass on cultural traditions. It's a key piece to understanding so many of the challenges Indigenous communities face today.
Okay, so knowing all that, where do we go from here? This is where we make the pivot from understanding the past to acting in the present. Let's talk about what respectful engagement and true allyship actually look like. This slide is great because it gives us some really practical, hands-on advice. When you're engaging with Indigenous communities or individuals, it all comes down to respect. That means you should probably be listening a whole lot more than you're speaking. It means recognizing that there isn't one Indigenous group, but hundreds of unique and distinct nations. It's about understanding the vital role that elders play as keepers of knowledge. And maybe most importantly, it's about showing up with sincerity and a whole lot of humility.
Now, let's bring all of this right into our professional lives. How can businesses, right here in the GTA, move from just being aware to taking real, tangible action? This is where the idea of economic reconciliation really comes into play.
So, what do we even mean by economic reconciliation? Well,
It's all about tackling the systemic barriers that have, for generations, locked Indigenous peoples out of the economy. It's about creating fair and equal access to jobs, to capital, and to a real seat at the decision-making table. This isn't just a nice to have, it's a fundamental part of the whole reconciliation journey. And guess what? There's actually a roadmap for this. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Call to Action number 92 is aimed squarely at the corporate world. It lays out a clear framework for businesses to follow, commit to real consultation, make sure there's equitable access to jobs and opportunities, and crucially, to educate your own people. So the million-dollar question is, what does this actually look like for your business? This slide breaks it down beautifully into 4 clear steps. Number 1, educate your team. Get that awareness training in place. 2, be intentional. Set real targets for hiring and keeping Indigenous talent on your team. 3, partner up. Look for Indigenous-owned businesses and bring them into your supply chain. And 4, put it all in writing. Create a real, formal reconciliation action plan. These aren't just ideas. They're concrete, doable steps. You know, at the end of the day, reconciliation isn't a box you can just check off a list. It's an ongoing journey of learning, of listening, and of doing. The goal isn't to be perfect, but to be present and to actually participate. So the question this leaves all of us with in our work lives and our personal lives is a really simple one. What's your next step going to be?